A reading this morning from the Gospel of Luke in the great 15th chapter. Listen for God's word to you. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or, what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." This is the word of God. Thanks be to God. So every era, whether we are aware of it or not, has a theology, a dominant way that that group of people thinks about God. Every era, whether we are aware of it or not, conscious or not, it has a latent theology, a dominant image or way of thinking about God. The era that we are in, we are still highly influenced by a medieval theology that images God as a judge, kind of a cranky judge as it happens. Now there are some good things about this dominant theology, this image that we have. Part of the good of this comes out of the Protestant Reformation, where we say we are saved or loved by grace through faith that is not a work of our own. So that this God, this judge, loves us, cares about us, not because of anything that we have done or could do, but simply because of the person, especially in Jesus Christ, who lived and died on our behalf, just because of that. Which means that all of this hustling after worth and grace, this striving for worthiness, we don't have to do that. That is amazing news. That is good news. But with every theology, especially when we're not reflective about it, there's often a bad side or a dark side. The dark side to this key image of God as judge, or one of the dark sides, because there are a few, is what's called a forensic understanding of salvation. That means just a legal understanding. And this means that, because it's not about our works, it's just a gift. Well, that means that it's really difficult for us to tell the difference between someone, let's pick a horrible person, like Hitler. We always go with Hitler. We say, "Oh, Adolf, some poor choices there." But at the end, if he says some magic words, has some kind of confession at the end, awesome. You're beloved, you're good, it's all good. But then you take somebody like Gandhi, who's amazing, right? Gandhi saved an entire people. He gave the gift to the world of nonviolent resistance. It partially founded the civil rights movement in America. Gandhi's amazing. As far as I know, Gandhi didn't say any magic words or invite Jesus into his heart at the end of his life. And so our theology has a really difficult time telling the difference between a horrible person who makes some confession at the end and someone like Gandhi. That's a problem. Yeah? When a theology can't tell the difference between Hitler and Gandhi, that is the problem. Okay. The first century did not have this medieval theology. The first century did not have this default of God as being this judge. Part of how we know this is that nowhere in the New Testament, nowhere do we find Paul gathering everyone together and going, okay, we got to make the sale. We've got to get them to accept Jesus into their hearts and then move on. So, all right, you go to this house, knock on the door. When did you come to know the Lord? Right? Paul never teaches people to do that. Paul never gives people a magic phrase to get people to say. No, Paul's trying to do something so much harder. Paul's actually trying to create real communities of people living together in resistance to the Roman hierarchy that split everybody up. Slave up down here, rich up here, free up here, women over here, men over here. Paul's trying to create real communities of people living out the values of Jesus and not being split apart by Roman hierarchy. Actual changes in their lives. That's really hard work. Not just getting people to say some magic phrase. Hakuna Matata would be an excellent magic phrase, Eric. No, the dominant image, the theological image in the first century, it's not God as a judge. It is the God who is the receiver of sacrifice. And that is really hard for us to really wrap our heads around because sacrifice is not something we practice anymore. One of my professors said the best way to think about this image is God as a cosmic vending machine. So if you are wanting something in your life, whether it's peace of mind or healing or a happy marriage or wealth, no problem. Because you have a God who is a receiver of sacrifice. Whether you're a Roman and you believe in multiple gods or a Jew and you believe in one God, if you get the right animal and you ask for the right thing in the right place, basically you insert goat and out comes the outcome that you want. That's the dominant image of the first century, is this God as a receiver of sacrifice. And there's something really comforting about this, isn't there? There are rules. You know how to relate to God because there's stuff that you can do. You can get the right animal. You can go to the right place. It's comforting to think of a God in some ways that way, but there are problems with God as the receiver of sacrifice too, aren't there? I mean, for one thing, it doesn't always work. In science, we know sacrifice a goat doesn't really do anything. But there's another really deep problem. It's this image of God. The image of God as a receiver of sacrifice is a God who is aloof and distant and cold and who is in a transactional relationship with you. God will help you or will care about you if you find the right animal, if you do the right things. But if not, this God isn't really going to lift a finger to help or care about you. This is the image that Jesus in his entire ministry, you could say, comes down to Jesus trying to tell us this image of God as a receiver of sacrifice is not right. Jesus' entire life and ministry, you could almost boil down to him challenging this image of God as a receiver of sacrifice. For one thing, he, who is God in the flesh, actually comes down and becomes sacrifice to destroy, to disrupt the entire sacrificial system, right? That's one thing. But second, he doesn't just come to destroy things with nothing to replace it with. You know those people who just like to poke holes in everything, but they don't have anything positive to offer you? They're just like, hey, you know why that's stupid? And they just, hate that. No, Jesus comes and he says, the way that you're thinking about God is all wrong, and there's something better. So what's happening today is that Jesus is hanging out with the wrong people. They're called tax collectors and sinners. Sinners here, this is a term of art that's important to understand. These are not people that are making bad choices or hurting other people hoi hamartoloi. This is the term for the sinners in the New Testament. It's a class of people. Because of the way power was structured in that day, there was an entire class of people who had to work with Romans. They had to be in connection with people who were unclean, which meant they were unclean. But they had to work. They had to feed themselves. There was nothing else to do. But for the high religious, there was no contact with these sinners, but not for Jesus. Jesus is hanging out with them, eating with them. In other places it says drinking with them. And the high religious, the leaders, find this out and go, aha, finally, the holy man Jesus. We see who he really is. It's a little bit like when you invite your Scottish pastor buddy to come and preach for you, and then he shares all of the things you were doing with him. And it wasn't that bad. He exaggerated, okay? He was talking about full humanity, and he was trying to amp it up, all right? So they get there, and they accuse him of consorting with these horrible people, eating and drinking. And Jesus isn't even upset. He doesn't even defend himself. He's like, no, you don't understand. No, he says, hey, let me tell you some stories about what God is really like. He says, God's a little bit like this. Imagine that you're a shepherd and you've got 100 sheep. Who among you, he says, wouldn't leave the 99 if one of them goes missing to go and search for it? Who among you wouldn't do it? Well, guess what? None of you would do that. Think about it. You're a shepherd. I hate to break it to you, but the world's a hard place. Sheep get lost, okay? There are wolves out there. Things happen. What kind of a shepherd would leave the 99 alone to go and search for the one? A crazy shepherd. That's a crazy shepherd, because you leave the 99 alone to go after the one, you're probably not going to find the one. And then you might lose the rest over here anyway. But Jesus says, you know what God is like? God's like a crazy shepherd who cares so much for you, is so passionately in love for you, that when you're lost, leaves the folks that are doing fine over here and say, hey, you're good, okay? You're fine. This sheep needs some extra attention. And this is a God who loves and is so passionate about you that God is crazy enough to go after you. Or, Jesus says, you don't like that one? God's like a crazy woman. Crazy woman who's got 10 silver coins. She loses a coin. So what? Except this is a mad woman, and so she sweeps the whole house. She gets her mops out and her brooms. I'm someone who loses things. I appreciate what this feels like. In fact, we're having problems at our home at the moment. Some of you know we have a snake now. We have a ball python. And one of the things that it has become adept at doing is hiding in its cage. And so Melissa, even this morning, goes, I can't find the snake again. And there's just, it's a nice snake, but there's just something about the thought of a python on the loose. Right? But no, you got to look through the whole thing. Today it was hiding under like a bark piece. It was like a hat going, ha ha, you can't see. This woman, she's searching not for a snake, for a tiny little coin. And she's crazy, because when she finds it, what does she do? She calls up all of her neighbors. She sends out invitations, evites, and has a party that's worth more than the coin, to say, we found the coin. Jesus says, that's what God is like. God isn't aloof and off in the distance, and only if you try or care and sacrifice the right animal does this God care about you. But this God is passionately, lovingly searching for you right this very moment. There's a lousy, dark side of this sacrificial theology, is that when we see someone who's having a rough time, in that kind of theology, we go, oh, they must not have done enough of the right thing. Maybe they didn't sacrifice the right way, or they didn't mean it, or they didn't try hard enough. And Jesus says, if when you see someone who's having a hard time and you go, I wonder what they did or didn't do, you're doing it wrong. Jesus says that the God who made us and in whose shape we are made, when we see someone who's struggling, we go, oh my gracious, there are all these people that are fine over here. Let them be, and then see what is it that we can do to help reweave that person into the fabric of community. Because if even one person gets rewoven back into the fabric, that is a red letter day. And it means all of us are better. All of us are stronger. And this madness, right, this craziness that this God exhibits, it's contagious. It's contagious. It's been happening around here. Yeah. For over a year now, we have had a crazy woman named Judy Nix. Judy, I don't know that this is true, but there had to have been moments where you're like, am I crazy? What am I doing? Judy had this idea of, hey, what if our church more actively connected with the world around us in meaningful and helpful ways? And she connected with Rose Money and Family Promise, this national organization. And then what she had to do, because what we do in Family Promise is we open our church to families who are experiencing homelessness with them and their children. She had to go around and find other churches that were willing to join and sponsor us. Have you ever tried to get a church to do something? Oh my gosh, first you have to get a meeting with them. That's almost impossible. And then you've got to present to their whole board, and there's always someone on that board where's Chip? Chip is right here. There's always a Chip Kyle. Chip's actually fantastic, but there's always somebody who's like, hey, what could go wrong? Like, why might this not be a good idea? Which is good. These are good questions. But these boards take forever to move, and Judy kept meeting with church after church, Judy and Gina teaming up. And there were times when it probably just seemed crazy. And do you know, tonight we have the first families that are coming, and it's the first time we get to host them. Because of Judy's craziness, she got 20 other churches to join us. 20. 2 other not-for-profits. And we get to host our first families tonight. It's a lot more sensible to just focus on the people that you know and can help, and you think about, oh, that world, what can we do? There's so much pain, and there's so much, it's more sensible to not think about it. It requires a little bit of craziness to think maybe we can make a difference. But I tell you, if there's even one family, if there's a child that we help to reweave into the fabric, it's worth it, yeah? And not just for them, but for all of us. Now, if you are wise and you're kind of interested in this, but this week you thought, you know what, let's let them work the kinks out, and then we'll sign up later. I don't blame you. But I have a short video just to tell you a little bit of what it is we're going to be doing this week. And my prayer is that the next time this comes around, we're going to be doing this 4 times a year, that you are going to want to be caught up in this madness. And that we're going to be winding up saying, hey, we have enough people. Right, sign up for the next one.
You're at that place where you can't go anywhere else. You've hit rock bottom, and it's almost like you're in this dark place and somebody reaches out a hand.
Across this country, there's few shelter beds for families. And those shelters that do take families in, they split families up. What's unique about Family Promise is that we keep families together. When they come into our program, We work with them to help rebuild their lives. We help them to find housing, jobs, job training. We help them find health care, daycare. It's a very comprehensive program.
The affiliate model is replicable and cost-effective because every community, whether it is a large city, a suburb, or a rural area, has the key components. They have congregations that can provide space. They have a pool of volunteers who are passionate, who want to make a difference, and realize that if you can get all of these people working together, you can address family homelessness in a way that is not only cost-effective, but highly successful.
I can't even put into words how it is that everybody was just there. It didn't matter who I was, what I've been through, why I was there. It mattered that I was Crystal and these were my children, and you wanted to be there for me.
Normally, when we're asked to support a cause, we're asked to write a check, or we're asked perhaps to serve on a board, and that's fine. But with Family Promise, we're given the opportunity to get our hands involved, to get our bodies involved, to get our minds involved, to get our children involved.
There's no other way to explain that than the darkness, and then there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just, there's no other feeling like that in the world, and it can be like that for everyone.
Compassion is alive and well in America. You know, we all lead such busy lives. It's not that we don't care. We want to make a difference, but we don't always know how to connect. And Family Promise allows people to make a difference in their own communities, in the lives of homeless families. When they get involved, doors are opened, lives are changed. The lives of homeless families, and the lives of volunteers as well.
God is a crazy shepherd. God is a mad woman. That craziness is contagious. I hope you catch it.